Oh. Back for another one. All right. All right. Oh, hello, someone out there. Not so safe spaces. I feel like this was one of those ones that's a little bit more self-explanatory to some extent, but also needs some. Obviously, isn't, I guess, because we're obviously pushing toward a period of time where everything is about, you know, making things as padded and as, I guess, safe as can be, which sounds like, really great. So you consider, I mean, just one, the basic image that's there where it's kind of got a good explanation there for creating these safe spaces where it's not bad to allow a place where you can be vulnerable and you can express yourself and not have to worry about, I guess, confronting the full magnitude of the world and other people's inverse perspectives. But at the same time, when it starts to protrude outside of that to society at large, where it becomes, social media, it becomes, in schools and everywhere you go, the whole goal is to protect everyone from anything that anyone else could possibly, do, which is bananas to me. I mean, I grew up, and I guess it was a caveman way of thinking about stuff, but we always said sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can't hurt me. You're like, no, words can hurt you. Your belief about the words, your belief about the persons, and like who they are, that's what you're being confronted with. The cognitive dissonance that you've created between, your internal world and reality is what hurts. A great example is if any of the worst things anyone could say, again, was said by some, crazy schizophrenic that's outside your car window, outside on the street. You wouldn't take it to heart. None of that would really get to you the same way as if it was, a coworker or some random person. So if it's the words, then why does it matter who says them, how they're said, when they're said? All of it is our internal beliefs about them. And if you are set up in an environment where your beliefs and everything are extremely protected, then you are creating vulnerabilities. It's the idea. It's like the idea of teaching someone to fish versus giving them a fish, right? Like you want to give them the fish their whole life. You want to never allow them to have to deal with holding onto that fishing rod and then figuring out the pain of thinking you have something on the hook and it's not there. Just all of the suffering of real life. You're trying to protect them from it. But what is that? Does that really like? I think the best way I can think of how that to analogize this is imagine, every kid at some point in time finds out that we all die one day, and it's kind of a hard thing to come to terms with. But imagine, a 3-year-old or someone finds out, hey, everyone dies one day. You show them with the dog or whatever, and they're upset, but then you can give them some candy or whatever and play a game with them, and they'll forget it. Or you try and protect them until they're 18 or 20. And then now, when they leave the house at 18 or 20, they're discovering like, hey, you could die out here. It's real life. How traumatic would that be to that 18-year-old, to that adult, to find out that everything that they thought was true is only true under this fake constructed circumstance? I really like if anyone wants to come in here and place some of their own perspective in here, but I can give one example that happened recently-ish. A couple examples, honestly. There was this young man, right? I guess you call him a stepkid, and he's outside. We're at the Springs, and he's wearing a shirt, right? And I already have an idea of why he's wearing the shirt, but I wanted to confront him about it, just to ask him. And his mother really didn't like that. She was like, why are you picking on? He's wearing a shirt because he doesn't feel comfortable about his body. She's like trying to tell me not to ask him there on the spot, like, hey man, why are you wearing a shirt? Because she thinks that I was trying to hurt him. But in reality, I was trying to protect him. And I gave her a great example of how I was trying to protect him by saying it has nothing, first of all, to do with whether or not he's overweight. Like, that's not the problem. If you want to be overweight, and you're comfortable in your body, then be comfortable in your body, which means that if I ask you, why you're wearing a shirt, you should be like, oh yeah, I'm overweight. I don't like the way it looks, whatever. But, if you're at least confident in that, then that'd be fine. Alternatively, maybe he's not okay with his body and it really bothers him, in which case this is the best time to address that issue, to exercise, to get in shape and turn himself into something that he really, really admires. But either way, the most important aspect of this whole thing is to be okay, be comfortable, safe in his own skin without needing any protective barriers. So his mom was, like, oh, why are you trying to ruin his day? Why are you trying to put him on the spot? And I kept trying to explain to her, I wasn't putting him on the spot to hurt his feelings. I was putting him on the spot to protect him from a worse danger in the future. First of all, I'm already very familiar with being uncomfortable with your body. I have a concave chest. I don't know if I can show it to you, but my chest it grows inward like that. And so whenever I go, for the longest time when I was a kid without a shirt on, I felt uncomfortable, weird, because someone would ask you, what's wrong with your chest? Why is it like that? And I'd have to explain to them, it's just the way I was born. Eventually I came up with the best way to explain it to her that she understood. And I told her, if he's uncomfortable taking his shirt off here at the spring with just random people, imagine how comfortable he's going to feel when he's finally getting to that intimate moment with, the woman that it will be his first. If he's uncomfortable with his shirt off here, how comfortable do you think he's going to be with his pants and everything off in front of someone he's trying to impress? Not comfortable at all. So how do you get past that? You don't get uncomfortable. You don't become comfortable through avoiding the issue. You overcome it through just doing it. I'm not sure how much of that he overheard, but it wasn't even like till the next day. We were walking through one of the stores. I think it was like a Dollar General or something. And I had to look over at him and I'm like, hey man, you're supposed to wear a shirt inside the store. Because in his head, it made, it just makes sense. It's like, I can, try to protect myself in these little circumstances here, or I can try to prepare myself for reality. To think about why they do or don't do things, especially without warning. Yes, I agree. Let me put that on there. Without warning, right? Good evening, Dr. Mark. Thank you. Thank you so much for showing up. Let me get something to drink. Yeah. But is that not life? Like, when does life ever give you a warning? And again, this also creates the vulnerability that I think from a father figure, you're most trying to protect them from. It's the idea that anything anywhere could happen, and it's better that you're aware of it, that you've been prepared for it under a certain level of structure, a certain level of safety, than to one day find yourself fending for yourself in the world without any sort of previous experience. And so if I have to provide warning, if I have to put you on the spot in a way that's safe or comfortable, all I'm doing is creating a vulnerability that the person who desires you the least, the person who is most upset with you, can use to their advantage at any point in time of their choosing. It's basically like giving the person, it's like giving the enemy a gun with bullets that you created because you told them, hey, this is what life is like. Life is like me protecting you from everything. In reality, it's not. Life is where you have these expectations that others are supposed to do things for you, but in reality, your rights are my obligations. My obligations are your rights. So anything that the worst person you could interact with might do simply to do it to hurt you in any sort of way is something that you can try to protect them from, or something that you can try and prepare them for. It's like anything in life, right? There's confidence. How do you get confidence? It's not something you can read in a book. Confidence is literally the mathematical expression. Simply put, if I do something 10 times and I'm successful 5 out of 10 times, my confidence is, here. If I do it 100 times and I'm successful 95 times, then I'm very confident because I've put myself through there. But when you haven't experienced it at all, when you have zero experience with whatever it is that you'd like to be confident that you'd be able to handle, you're going to be the most insecure about, and you're not going to have any confidence because there's zero trials. It's completely unknown, like a freight train. Again, when I graduated, yeah, everyone gets it to some extent, some far worse than others, but it's especially hard for I think mothers in particular, because the connection that you have to your child and the nurturing of them, and you always kind of see them in your head as your baby, right? It came from you, you nursed them, and now they may be bigger, but to you they're still your baby. But part of, correct me if I'm wrong, being a parent is preparing your child for the world. And if you continually treat them like they're your baby, that's the opposite of preparation for the world. Just think about all the bullshit that you have to deal with in your life, that you've had to deal with, and think to yourself, like, however well you do or don't handle it, do you really want to leave them less prepared than you were? I would think to myself, man, these are the things that I feel most uncomfortable about in my life. These are the things that, I'm still maybe even trying to work out myself. These are the things that I want to bring to my kid in like a safe, manageable way. Imagine, eventually at 18, they have to be in the world where I'm not going to be able to tell them not to drink and drive or not to do. They're going to have to be there for themselves to do that. And so what I'd like to do is prepare them with obstacles in real time, things that may feel uncomfortable, that may be scary, or even, who knows, painful emotionally or physically. Because why? Well, here under my supervision, I can provide that ultimate protection if things go too far, and then give them hopefully guidance and let them try again. So that way, by the time they're an adult, they're 18 or 20, whatever in the world, they've had some practice. It's like anything. If you were, trying to get a sports team together and you just never practiced, how are you going to be prepared for the game if you never studied, if you never exercised? Yeah, struggle is growth. Yeah, I think Einstein said adversity introduces a man to himself. And there's a favorite poet, I forget his name, but he said that adversity is the first path to truth. Basically, if you want to, keep things calm, if you want to avoid adversity, then you're avoiding maturation, you're avoiding the truth. And no one's ever done better with less, right? I think most people would agree information is probably the most important thing in the world. How do you get it if you don't ever experience it? I'm a fan of giving people more exposure. Yeah. Again, I think to myself, like a simple example, I already mentioned, I'd rather my kid discover the harsh realities about death and certain things earlier. One, so that way they can build on that knowledge, right? To discover it 10, 15 years down the road is to be that many years behind anyone else who learned it earlier. But then also, again, it's a lot easier to soothe a child, right? They're younger. Tell them something harsh, whatever. Tell them, let them experience some reality of life, and then let them experience the benefit. Like, hey, I'm going to take you to Disney World now, or you know, give your kids some abnormally difficult task that they might fail, but then it's like, if you succeed, I'll give you a second Christmas or something like that. But it's going to be painful. It's not going to be easy. Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you? How's everything? I mean, my brother looks like in full. You know, I'm. He's like yeah, he's doing great. Yeah, he's taking everything out. He's discussing everything. Yeah, perfect. I just joined and I saw the link and I said, let's go and talk with Anthony. What's going on? What's happening? What is new? How's everybody in the family, kids?
Good and getting better. Things are always getting better, as long as whenever there's some sort of difficulty, you learn and you grow from it. And that's what I've been working to do. And so I've been seeing progress, and it's meaningful. What about you? How's your family
Everything.
life?
They. It's like 4 in the morning here, and I was sleeping, and then I woke up at like an hour back. I saw that my nephew was like, um, he had a fever last evening. I mean, in the evening he was having a fever, and I went out to the dispensary to get him some medicines. Like the medical system here is different than in the U.S. So I went there and I brought some medicines to give it to him, and when as soon as he got feeling better, he took his mobile phone and started playing those games. And till now, just an hour back, he was like playing games. And are you don't have any more fever? He said, no, I'm fine. I'm like, so what? I mean, you're going to school tomorrow in the morning. Like, it's just 3 hours. If you're not going to have some rest, how are you going to go to school? He said, no, I'm not going to school because I'm fever. I'm like, come on, you're playing game, but you're not going to school. So then I went to his father and I told him he's up and he's not sleeping. I mean, get him sleep. So he scolded him and said, come to bed, come to bed." And then they. So life is like this is how it goes on. Yesterday, a day before yesterday, I was somewhere, and he was a very famous entrepreneur here, and he runs a big company with 5,000 employees. And what I see, we call them satyas, like in the other way around, like the business leaders. Okay, because they are mostly in the hunt of new people, the young ones, the fresh graduates all the time. So um, what they do, they go to these universities where they tell about their companies and look for new fresh graduates to impress them through their entrepreneurial journey. And you cannot judge anybody just through because he's a famous entrepreneur and then everybody else want to do the same. And this is one like big trauma here, like because the young generations, they see one profile and they get inspired through them, and that's very dangerous.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with that is that they're getting inspired just based off of the glamour, the appeal. They're not getting inspired off of the process, the weight of what's required with all of these things. People just assume like it would be better just to trade places. The grass is greener type of thing. You know, uh, Peter Muffler here said, Yeah, I think that's how you said it. Words can cause violence, and I mean, I'd say that violence can cause violence. Like, you don't need words to cause violence. People can just look at each other, and to say that words cause violence is to strip people of their power, of their sovereignty. It's to say that you don't have the ability to control yourself and to decide how you're going to respond to any situation. You've been predetermined, we've told you over the course of your life that these words mean certain things. They're not even tangible. They're just these intangible things that the word means. And because these words are harmful and these aren't, you have to feel this way about those words. You have to respond a certain way to those words. And that becomes the dangerous thing. And I've seen it happen before. I can give you an example where there was this single mom I was talking to about her kid. I think she has mixed kids, right? And so I was like, what if, somebody was just started calling your kid the N word on the street and just, oh, look at that little N, started trying to say whatever. She's like, I would fight him, right? Like, she would literally physically get into an altercation to defend her child against that verbal, I guess you could say it was verbal attack or verbal assault, whatever. And then I thought to myself, so how does that protect your kid? Because if it was me and someone started saying those kind of words to my kid, I would look at the person, look at my kid and be like, oh, crazy, right? Don't touch us or touch them or do anything. Like, if you cross a physical boundary, then I'm liable to take your life, for my kid. But if you're just gonna use words, like, it's gonna be like, oh, just put on your headphones, listen to music, or like, why are you calling me the N word? Whatever it is, don't respond the way they literally want you to respond. Don't get upset. Why? For many of reasons. One, just to be selfish. Like, I don't like the idea. I don't like feeling upset. And I don't like the idea that anybody anywhere can just simply ruin my state of mind, my feeling, because they uttered sounds out of their mouth. And again, right? Like, it's simple as this: is either it's intentional or it's unintentional. And if someone's intentionally trying to upset me, I don't like them, right? I don't like the way they're acting. Why would I give them what they want? Especially when it comes at the cost of how I feel. I win by recognizing that these words only have the power over me that I allow them to have. You can call me any sorts of names you want to. You talk about my mom, my living circumstance, and the more you talk about me, the more, well, confused I guess I would get. It's like, what am I listening for a reason? Do I think I could talk? Like, what's the purpose behind it? And most of the time, the only purpose that they have is that they're a hurt person trying to hurt someone. They're scared. They're ignorant. So either they're intentionally hurting you or they're literally just ignorant, in which case becoming violent or aggressive or angry certainly doesn't solve the problem. I mean, just the idea that so many, uh, pigmented or black Americans could say to themselves, yeah, it's okay if I say the N word, but you can't say it because you don't know what that word, you don't know what kind of pain that word has, you don't know what it's like, and it's like, no, neither do you. Not a single person who's responding to those words right now ever had to experience slavery. The closest they got to it is they have a grandparent that can explain to them certain aspects. But that's not a personal reason for someone to go and get violent because of words, and so we're trying to find a way to create peace through safety by protecting people from words, but people should be more willing to protect themselves from words by just disregarding them. And if you're like, well, you can't disregard them, I'd ask you why. Do you guys have any reason for why you think? I mean,
Weapon,
when it comes,
weaponized joking, or some sort of like when that that jokes that mostly like they put it on the race, gender, religion, or they brought up so many things, and about
Mhm.
maybe sometimes it's like you're triggering their emotions with the psychological impact, or like mostly that happens in like bullying in the school, high school. And I remember back in days when I have to be bullied because my mother is she's a Kashmir Sayyida, and my father was a Sunni Muslim, so they used to call me Khatmal, and it's like they bully you because they say, oh, your father is different, you are different, and so it happens. But once you grow up, you learn, and you understand that they all are part of the society, and you
Mhm.
you get adjusted with everything, and then over time everything keeps on changing because it's not we are not living in the same era back in 1995 or 2000, and
Mhm.
now it's like 2025. So people have educated themselves over the years how to have the social bounding, and how
Mhm.
to be respectful with each other.
Mhm. Yeah, but I feel like when we do a lot of the social boundaries and the trying to protect people by having like these guidelines. Obviously, there's certain guidelines that should be kept, right? Like don't go and start speaking about how and making plans about how you're going to actually cause physical harm to somebody, um, but to say words to try to elicit an emotional response for them to trigger them into reacting, that's a vulnerability that I wouldn't want my kid to have. And I think to myself, the best way to do that is to desensitize them to it. Like if somebody says something that hurts them and they've gone their whole life like, oh, treating them the same way if it was someone crazy saying it, then I'm not allowing the worst of the worst people out there that have intentions purely to harm to have that easy access. It's like everybody's walking around with like uh, protective gear on. We've got these rules where we can only use these plastic knives, and everyone's got to have protective gear on. But all that does is help protect you from the people who themselves aren't really the threat. What happens is now you're not prepared to face someone who is a threat, who says to heck with this plastic knife or to heck with all this protective stuff. I'm going to break all of the rules you created because it's as simple as opening my mouth, because you've made it that simple. And so to really want to protect my kid from the future is to say like, hey, I can either try and fight every single person, put you in a place, get angry with anyone who tries to use words to elicit an emotional response, or I can teach you to regulate that yourself. So that way, the second somebody comes up and they try to hurt you with words, you can just kind of look at them and like, come on, man, you're just calling me the N word, you're just calling me stupid this or that because you're trying to hurt me, which is funny because it's like if you got into a boxing match with somebody and they just pulled out like a bunch of balloons without just started throwing, helium balloons at you. It just bounces off. Why? Because you don't have to accept. You literally don't have to accept it. If the problem comes is when someone says something that I think triggers some sort of a truth, something that's either misunderstood or not understood, some part of yourself that you're not confident about. And so then now you want to control other people's speech so that way they can be responsible for maintaining your safety. But if you outsource your safety like that, then again, any random person with no real means can just walk right through that door simply because you created it over a long period of time, you know? And yeah,
Yeah,
inciting violence is, yeah, it's a
I
similar,
mean, some sort of words, like they they've been used as for to like a drug to to create this whole word and mankind. I mean, people use these words to 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 actually, most of the battles in the world, they happen because of words. Yeah, I mean, there are some like things, if they misunderstood, and because of the language, and most of the people, whether that happened with swords, whether that happened with guns, anything. But the reason which was found was they misunderstood each other, and then those clashes and wars and the history that happened. So
Mhm.
we should like take a little break, and And Tony, I think, I mean, as we are humans, right, and he has given us that amazing brain to think and to respond, and a little bit like, breathing between sentences, and to reflect back what somebody is like, what he meant. So as far as to avoid the conflict, so to keep it peace, harmony.
Mhm.
So it's a personal choice. Like if even somebody is triggering you and you're not comfortable with with those truth, which some, and you don't have those answers for that. So even to surrender, I guess, to surrender for the moment, um,
Mhm.
to understand, okay, it's not about me losing and somebody else is winning at this point. It's just like maybe my conscious is not like ready to understand what somebody else is meant with that, right? So sometimes it's just like surrendering to the moment and to understand, yeah, I mean, there is something that is more in depth in it, and I have to understand it before I can respond. So words, your feelings, they become thoughts. Your thoughts, they become words. Your words, they become actions. Your actions, they slowly transform into habits. Your habits become character, and then that becomes your destiny. So
Mhm.
something like, we should be. Yeah,
Mhm.
you're right.
What about what about you on this situation, Colm? I have some ideas of how I would handle things. Like you, I'm not sure if you've got kids, Michael, or how how do you go about navigating these circumstances where you know you want to protect them from things, but how much is there that's protecting, and how much is you preparing them for the world, and what does preparation really look like? And Czar, whenever you're ready to go back on, you can unmute. I just wanted to hit it for the static that I was hearing.
Hmm.
Well, I do have kids, yes, and the world is a different place. I'm basically trying to understand where he's coming from. Right now, what he currently does is just he avoids conflict. Um, when he approaches him, he does like what you said. Just basically he doesn't even respond. He simply either gets up and goes away to another location. Doesn't make any doesn't seem to think that anybody needs to antagonize him for any particular reason. He keeps to himself as much as he possibly can. Um, and if he has friends, those who engage with him properly, in a quality, in a manner of, just his friends. He hangs
Mm-hmm.
out with them. Um, so he's a pretty mellow pet fella. He doesn't. I really don't. I don't bother him when it comes to issues such as that, or we don't even discuss them much. I just approve the way he handles it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so long as it's not in his face. But if it's someone that's continuously being rotten to him and mean and really really wants to antagonize him, then I I do have to let him know that he can. There are two ways to handle it. One, he can do what he's continuing doing, or the other is he can stand up and inflict as much pain as they are inflicting on him.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
what else can you do? It's kind of like
Yeah.
if they're continuously just doing it, then give it right back to them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. Um, it's not something. It's not something I want to say, but it is something that's gonna help him survive, help him get a bit of a backbone, help him understand that there are even people like that out there who actually do things like that, you
Mm-hmm.
know, to just
Yeah.
antagonize you,
Yeah.
for a long period of time, unless you put a stop to it. simply, but not necessarily doing the same things they're doing, but in a particular manner, in a way in which um, you encourage them to stop whatever they're doing, because if they continue, then you're going to be a threat to them.
Yeah,
It's
I can
basically
definitely
what I
relate.
want to.
I can definitely
Go ahead.
relate to that, especially when it comes to like a physical bully. I try
Yeah.
to imagine if I had a son or a daughter that, you know, some age decided that they wanted to, to transition, right? And they, let's say they were born a boy and they wanted to transition to a female and be called her and be a woman. And I'd say, I love you and I'll support you in anything that I think, is best for you. That's going to make, your life ultimately better. But one thing that I want to, help them understand is that, look, you are doing this for yourself. You're doing this for
Hello.
the people maybe in your life, but what's really important, I think, is to try to get it into their mind somehow that
Thank you.
there are going to be others out there that are going to see you differently, and you can try as you might to force them to act a certain way, to respond a certain way, and to, I mean, you'll never really just get them to see the same way you do because everyone sees differently, or you can accept them, right? If
Yeah.
you're now she and this person's calling you Mr. or he or whatever, you can be like, no, sorry, I'm a she. Refer to me as a she. I need to get your supervisor. I need to get this. You're getting upset. Your meal's getting ruined. Whatever's happening. Then now finally you corrected this one person of many, and all that happens is either one, the ideas that are in their heads are still there. They just keep it to themselves, so you don't know the real people that you're interacting with. Or two, the second somebody wants to use it against you, they can simply use it against you, and you'll be stuck responding to that. And so someone calls you a he and you're a she, just be like, okay, sure, just respond normally, right? Like the same way I would respond, right? If somebody started referring to me as a she, saying like, hey Anthony, whatever, like I'm not gonna tell them that I'm a man or that I'm a he, or I feel like for me, I'd say it's pretty obvious. If they asked me, I'd tell them. But otherwise, for me to insist that this person abide by a certain set of standards for me to be comfortable, to be safe and happy, is to basically just put a gun in everyone's pocket and just tell everyone that like, just not to use it on you. And it's an easy one to use because all they have to do is open their mouth. It's and then now I'm expected. It's the same way with the N word, right? Like if someone says it, you're expected to respond. I have to get into a fight. I have to get angry. No, I'd rather go
No.
back
The
to
other way
listening to whatever song
I
I.
do that is I simply do not respond. Um, and it's not like I'm ignoring. It's more like I choose. Now I've chosen not to communicate with you because you're being disrespectful. Why would I want to communicate with someone that's being disrespectful? I can't. It's intolerable. So I simply say no. I will not
Yeah.
communicate with you. And I'll go uh, I'll do as much as I possibly can to basically re-emphasize that if no matter in any space that we're in, even if you're trying to communicate with me and you say the right words or anything like that, I'll make it clear that what you have done has been disrespectful and thus you are not being I'll just miscommunicate with you. I'll do things with other people. I'll respond to them. But you, no. Why?
Yeah,
You
and
don't
that
deserve
makes
it.
yeah that makes a ton of sense. And in a lot of circumstances, I always then go to. I just think to myself, there's going to be a lot of circumstances in life where you simply can't not communicate. It could be the police officer pulling you over, a teacher, it could be your supervisor, it could be another coworker, and then you could start to express, your problems with the way that they're responding to you, and that you're either not going to do this or you expect this and that. But then ultimately, again, it goes back to intention versus unintentional. Either they're doing it intentionally to and to elicit these negative emotions, in which case they're getting away with it. And then now, how do you force them to abide by these rules that keep you feeling safe in your identity and who you are?
If
Well,
that is the
through
case,
force.
I,
Like
I
that's what
make
they're.
sure I make sure I communicate with them
Mhm.
and correct them, because
Yeah.
if you do not correct people who um, misuse you, who mislabel you,
Mhm.
then what you're doing is that you're being silent and you're encouraging this behavior in them. And not only that, but you're encouraging other people who are hearing this behavior
Mhm.
to
What if?
to
Oh,
treat
sorry.
you the same way, and you don't want to do that.
What happens if you correct it and their response isn't to stop, but to increase their behavior? So exactly what you told them you didn't want, now they're going out of their way to do it more.
Well,
Do you?
that's when you go to step two. Is you say, "I'm not communicating with you anymore," and you make it clear. You make it absolutely and utterly clear. I'm not talking to you anymore, or I'm not responding to you. And there's a lot of people who, I mean, yeah, and that's a case here in work at work. There's some people that don't like to be called him. They don't like to be called he or her. They like to be called them. They don't want the feminine or masculine pronouns to be attached to them. And sometimes I get that wrong. But all the time I do it, they correct me. They tell me right off the bat. They don't even give any space. Once they do that, they don't give it any space. They remind me, I'm not such a person. I am this and that. And then I have to, rethink in my mind and reconfigure my brain so that I can purposely,
Mhm.
when I'm addressing them, I call them
Mhm.
them. I don't call them
Yeah.
he. I don't call them her. Just them. And
Yeah.
that's just it's been quite a bit for me to rewire my mind. But I've been able to be respectful, and I've been able to conduct myself appropriately when I'm around them. And as a result, I have flourished. I have flourished better because of the fact that they are responding to the fact that I am respecting them and the way in which they want to be addressed. So, which is good. This is another way
Mhm.
of doing it. I,
Yeah.
if
And
there's any other
and
way
I,
that you know of, let me know.
oh no, but what I'm saying is that, and I agree that when you said if you don't address it, then I'd say to some extent you're encouraging it, or you're at least allowing it to continue, or
To
maybe even
perpetuate.
escalate,
Hmm.
perpetuate. Yes, that's a good word. But I think that that's only the case for well-meaning, what you would call a nice or good individual like yourself.
Right.
There's always still going to be that opposite person, the person who isn't well-meaning, the
Yeah.
hurt
And
person
and
who's just trying to hurt.
here's the thing. Is that's all I am looking for is people who are familiar, what do you call it? Similar to me in
Mhm.
attitude and responses. And I don't engage with people who are dissimilar to me in terms
Mhm.
of manners, um, because that means that I am always going to have conflicts with them. So I avoid those types of people, um, because I know that it's going to lead down a particular path, and I do not want to go down that path because at the total end of that path, it's either me dying or it's them dying, one of the two, and I don't want to reach that point, so I
Mm.
avoid it.
Yeah, so that's where that extreme, that's where the emotions are so linked to it that it becomes extreme.
Yes.
And I I I like the idea. I like the the theory of that. I'm always trying to protect against the circumstances that are the most damaging, the ones where you're least capable of just making these decisions. So, like if you were pulled over by a police officer, if the doctor who's the only person in the ER is working on your significant other, if again, it's maybe it's your supervisor or something like that, and you can try and find another job, but until then, you know, are you going to continually feed into their negative desires to hurt you at this point, because the more you respond, even through not responding, is them getting a reaction, you know. And so if they're trying to hurt my feelings, I want them to think like it's nothing, right? Like I
Right.
want
But
to.
if you let them know that you're not responding because they are hurting you,
Mhm.
then and their job is to make sure that they do no harm. All they're trying to do is just, you know, get information from you or get you to respond correctly. Well, there's a certain way in which that can be done, and you let them know.
Mhm.
If they cannot get that, then how is it your fault? It's kind of like,
Oh,
you know, it's not my fault now, you know, because
no,
I've been taught, you know, this is the way I communicate, and I'm doing it correctly. I'm not, I've done it correctly. I've not put put them in any sort of harm. I have not indicated that I'm rudely that I'm not going to do it. No, I told them ahead of time. This
Mhm.
is who I am. This is how I want to be, you know, instructed. So if you can instruct me in that manner, I'd certainly appreciate, because that's how I respond. Why? Because my brain is wired that way.
Mhm.
I'm telling you up
Exactly.
front, my brain is wired
Mhm.
this way. So if you want me, I really don't think that everybody's looking for conflict just for the sake of looking for conflict,
Mhm.
because that can go in either way, you know. And
Mhm.
if and you might have a bad day one day, and when you have a bad day, you know, bad things happen. You can get shot,
Mhm.
you can die, and
Michael,
then you're at
my
the end of that.
my
Go ahead.
question though is, what if I can't go along with your reality? Meaning, I have this phrase I say to Anthony often, or anyone I'm speaking with: your freedom stops at my nose. But that also means my freedom stops at your nose. So if I cannot go along with your reality of X, let's say you believe you're a pony. I I I can't. I'm sorry. I don't believe Anthony is a pony. So at some point, my reality is coming up against his belief, and I don't know. And it really depends on what the situation is. But I'm probably not going to bend my reality to his belief. Now, if I'm not probably going to talk about Anthony as a pony. So I'm going to, like I mentioned in the comments, I'm going to refer to Anthony as Anthony. So what part of my problem with pronouns, for instance, is why I refer to people by their names if it's first person. And again, for me, then you're asking me to abrogate my freedom of speech about referencing you as to what I believe is reality. Now, again, am I going to go out of my way? And this where intent, I think, is important too. And Anthony has kind of touched on this. I think intent is important. I'm not going to go and hurt you on purpose. But at some point, if pressed, I'm probably going to err on the side of what I believe at that moment reality is. Because and back to what Anthony was talking about early on in the program, we deal with children, for instance. Don't grab the hot stove, the hot pot on the stove. That's different to me than building a quote unquote safe space that says words of violence, because there's all sorts of toxic situations we're going to be exposed to, and we're going to have to deal with it. Now, how you deal with it, but uh, how do we prepare young adults or even teenagers to go out into the world and act as viable citizens if they are so protected that they're never running up against anything? And I'm not talking about the N word. I'm not saying I would ever use the N word,
I
although
think everyone should. I think
well,
it's
I
free
think it,
words. Yeah.
but well, I think it's kind of funny that some percentage of the population, particularly artists and comics, use
Black
it all
people, yeah.
over the place, and
Mhm.
and the another segment of the population is forbidden from saying that. But whatever. I mean, I understand. The reasons they do that is to sort of remove the power of the word, right? And I'm fine with that. Um, but I guess my concern becomes, particularly if we go all the way the other way. One of my things is, believe it or not, is national thought control. So if we are saying that we must use X pronouns, or I must call you a pony, in the third person, or whatever, uh, I have as much of a problem with that. Free
Mhm.
speech, part of the problem with free speech is free speech, but it also gets things out there so we know where people stand. I would rather know where Anthony stands on a given subject, even if I vehemently disagree with him, even if I find it offensive, because
Mhm.
I want to know where Anthony stands.
Mhm.
Because what's worse, drive it underground, and then we have a whole segment of the population that is thinking a certain way, that
Mhm.
we can't prepare ourselves against. So I this is a very interesting topic, Anthony, because
I,
I've seen it kind of weaponized, and built an ideology that is not allowing people to think for themselves. And to me, it's like, okay, then you're opening yourself up to almost any ideology, particularly in some of our
Mhm.
educational systems. And I'm very concerned about that. I want you to be able to kind of go into the rough and tumble of life and be able to deal with adversarial subjects. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, there's like with the adversarial subjects. I feel like if there's this mental picture in my head, right? I have this version of my kid. They're whatever age, they're on their own, walking through the world. Now, there's two versions of them. There's the version of them that they're both being assaulted verbally. Someone's trying to trigger them. They're using all of the words that we would say are words that could create violence, right? Any word you can think of. One version of my child, gets upset, turns around and starts to get into a physical altercation. Maybe they win, maybe they don't, but it's a physical altercation where people could get hurt. Either way, whatever was going on that day, going to school, work, whatever, just kind of gotten the whole day just got thrown upside down. And there's the other version of my kid that looks over at them and just like, pulls out their cell phone or just like completely lets it go right over their head. Why? Because they've decided that I care more about my mental well-being. I care more about the way in which I can control my emotions, because I think emotions, the way you feel, is so important. Probably the most important thing to anyone, really. And so to just give that away to anybody, to just say like, if you use these words, I'm going to act like this. Like I'm going to get upset. At first I'll correct you, then I'll get upset, and then I'll get violent if you use these words. That for me, it's like I don't want anyone to have that kind of control over myself, my kid, or anyone that I care about. And so how do I take the power away from the word? Instead of saying like only I can use it and you can't use it. And so now it's like we're taking our perception of this aggression and we're turning it inward on each other because they use it differently. Sometimes it's friendly, sometimes it's a derogatory statement, but it didn't really remove the power of the word. It's just like you just took the gun out of the hand of someone else, put it in your own hand, and now you and your friends are shooting each other with it. Or just to take the bullets out, just to starve the fire of oxygen completely by not responding to it. Right? I told you what I wanted. If you don't respond a certain way, then I'll not respond certain ways. I won't engage with you more than is absolutely necessary for the job.
Well,
Sweet.
Instead of
why, Anthony, give okay? If you have an adversary that is purposely instigating you to, whether it's violence or response of anything, why are you going to give him what he wants? I guess is my thing is so there's a saying that went through my head: when you lose control, you lose control. Do you want to
Mhm.
lose control over a word? Now again,
Mhm.
I've been called names, and I've been bullied, and on and on. But man, that's I don't want to give power to people
To
any
literally
more than I
control
have.
my body.
Yes, and particularly like, I was going to throw in, okay, so I pull a gun. So now
Mhm,
I've totally stepped, into a
mhm,
situation where, particularly if I pull a trigger and someone dies, now I'm looking at life in prison or something. So
mhm.
so what am I allowing? And this goes back to this control idea is so I'm going to allow someone to put me into prison for life because I
Yeah.
didn't like what they said. And I'm going to disagree a little bit with
Mhm,
Farrar, but this is an aside on what world wars are about. I don't think they're typically about ideology. I I tend to think they're about land grabs and taking over land masses and power. And I don't think that's the same as necessarily about
No,
ideologies, although
you're right.
obviously there are certain ideologies like Hitler and so on that he had a belief, but he was using that to gin up um, power for himself and the
mhm,
movement, then to take over landmass. So
mhm.
anyway, that's an aside. I don't want to go down
Yeah,
that
but yeah.
too
So
too deep
but
down that
I
rabbit
think
hole.
the question comes, like for you, Calm, I think, or for anyone on this side, would you prefer that you have a kid that is impervious to verbal assault, or would you like to have a child that is completely controlled by verbal, triggers, right? Like, to even if it doesn't go all the way up to physical violence, just the
Pe-
idea
pe-
that someone could
pe-
ruin
People
my mood.
control. People sometimes control from the eyes also.
Yes, a lot. Yeah, that's a huge one.
Verbal is like two ahead. I mean, I see Furam, my brother, watching Ayan like that, and he
Yeah, like,
understands everything that maybe I'm doing something wrong. So,
yeah,
you
look
know,
at you, like, yeah.
yeah, I mean, the first thing we ever learned in life was, I mean, the first anniversary and the parents when first the baby is born. Okay, happy. We all are happy. Oh, the baby is born. I'm Papa now. I'm. And then on the first birthday, and before the first birthday, you get another celebration when for the first time he says, "Papa." You're like,
Mhm.
wow, let's cut a
Yeah,
cake
like,
now. Let's
mhm,
cut a cake. That's the time.
mhm,
And then slowly, slowly you teach them. But the point is, how are we teaching them? Because that 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 heaven where he is growing up, he's learning from you, from the papa and
mhm,
mama. He doesn't
mhm,
maybe you know he has no one else right now. He's not going to school. And the first 7 years were very crucial
mhm,
to for his brought up, the way he is going to think
mhm,
and process it and then answer, right?
mhm,
So he's going to learn everything from mama, papa, grandfather, brother, or siblings, or anybody he's around. My point is, Mike was right. Like, not it was Zen, Zan, Zer, Zameen. That the three things which we say, because of women's, because of uh, land, and because of having wealth,
mhm,
most of the battles that happen. Okay,
mhm,
but then again, why did the all prophets, they they came in this world for the guidance of us, that who
mhm,
people used to laugh on Noah. Okay, and he was chopping trees and all, and pe- we and people, they were like, man, come on, we don't have water to drink, and he's making a big ark when the clouds are clear and there is nothing out there, right? And look at this man. So they used to make fun of him, but he used to hear them from the ears,
mhm. Yeah.
but he never took them into his heart,
Mhm. Yeah.
because in the heart it was
Mhm.
another divine message
Mhm.
that he was carrying, that he knew that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
I th- I think some of the issue though is the parent, like when it comes to the way the parents themselves might feel is that they're extremely emotionally attached to their kid and in ways that the rest of the world isn't. I'll give you an example with this 3-year-old, right? She this 3-year-old, she can control her mom. She can, if she wants something from her mom and her mom doesn't give it to her, then she'll get upset. And if her mom still doesn't give it to her, then she'll get more upset. She can win about, I'd say, 8 out of 10 conflicts by simply escalating and getting more and more temper tantrums, freaking out. And I try to explain to her, like, look, yeah, it might be easier for you in this moment to just give her the phone to shut her up or to do whatever she wants in that moment. But that is so harmful to her because when she gets out into the rest of the world, she's not going to be treated like the way you treat her, right? When she wants something and she doesn't get it, and she's expecting what you've been preparing her. Like this is the life she's used to, is that she wants something, she gets it. If she doesn't get it, then the solution is to react emotionally without thinking. And you take that out into the world, and now you just have someone who is going to be, it it's like if you put somebody in a wheelchair their whole life and you never let them use their legs, and then you took them to the starting line of a marathon and you said, run to the end of this marathon, that's where your food and shelter is. If you can't make it there, well, then you die, because that's reality. The second you're not there to continually push them, which you can't be, you literally can't protect them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're not going to be there when they're at work or any. So to leave them expecting everybody to treat them the way someone who is like to a crazy extent attached to them emotionally, cares about them in ways hopefully more than anyone else would, is to set
Emotional
them up
part
for a certain
would,
amount of failure.
that emotional part will come when they'll go above 14.
Mhm.
The first 7 years will be teaching them.
Mhm.
You just teach
Mhm.
that to give me the glass of water with the right hand, not with your left hand.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
that will be
Yeah.
the first 7 years, and
Mhm.
then from 7 to 14, you're going to start giving them advices,
Mhm.
and then
But
after
at that,
14 to next 7 years, you're going to make them friends.
yeah. But that advice will only go so far as that they, like I feel like by the time they start to get into puberty and they're getting influence from outside with with school and everything, if you set them up to a point where they're not used to basics of like sharing and recognizing that there's just certain truths about the world that are less desirable maybe, then when you're trying to give them that advice later, there's still going to be that emotional trigger under the surface. And I think you see it a lot when it comes particularly to uh, kids. I think it's mostly boys, but kids raised by single mothers, because they haven't ever been, they've been cared for in such a way where they've never had to face real adversity. And then they don't know how to assert themselves because, if there's a problem, just avoid it, just come away or go tell somebody, look out for someone to protect you. But then the second, no one's protecting them, or something keeps happening and it keeps building up and they can't assert themselves, eventually they get to a point where they snap. And what does that look like? That usually looks like kids getting in physical altercation, or they're fighting. They're anxious, they're depressed, because they don't know how to assert themselves, how to express these realities that they're living in, because for all of however long they've been kept inside this box. And then, so now puberty's hitting, the kids trying to talk to girls or girls to guys, and there's these different interactions, and then
You're
now you're
right.
trying to prepare them for the world, and it might be too late, especially if they're spending most of their time at school and elsewhere.
Yeah, because the education system, the way it has been designed to keep the children in the school most of the time, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I was reading about the divorce, how divorce rates in the worldwide. Okay, it happens here also. It's not like we are like, because I'm talking about the worldwide, but the first marriage and the second, first divorce, second divorces, and third divorces. I mean, these, like, you got married again, and then the ratio, and that ratio is getting more and more and more, because now we have stopped living with our, because first they were like parents. We used to live with our parents, and they used to guide us.
Mhm.
They used to enter if there is any conflict between husband and wife. The elders used to come in and sort it out.
And
But now, because as the world we are going ahead, and the kids are growing up, everybody wants their own life, everybody wants their own privacy.
Mhm.
So and then some parents, they are financially very strong because they're working, so they decided to have their own house, to live with their own children, and to teach them the manners they really wanted to teach them, instead of what grandfathers or grandmothers are teaching them. So
Mhm.
now that culture of patriarchal and patrilineal system is getting away and away,
Mhm.
and more divorces are happening
Mhm.
on one side,
Yeah.
and especially the single
Also.
mothers, or
Mhm.
I've seen so many of them,
Mhm.
who, like, single mothers now, like, my in my case, in my house, we the children's, their mother passed away. Okay, they passed away. I'm just giving an example,
Mhm.
like, when somebody dies in the family, and then what trauma those children are going to grow up. So what we did was, we took the children from that city away, where
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
mother was, like, being raped, where my sister-in-law was being raped. So the first thing, and that was to move from that place, to move away
Mhm.
from the city where you have lots of traumas, so that they can
Mhm.
forget, they can go into some new culture, they can meet some new relatives, and
Mhm.
to forget what all happened, right?
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
so it's
Th-
very challenging when once the kids are growing without a mother, because that
Mhm.
that column of missing your mother is cannot be
Yeah. Yeah. Missing a mother or missing a father, and what's worse is when they, I think when they end up missing that parent because of it was just overall is a disagreement, right? The mother is gonna say, because most divorces are from this woman's side, but she's gonna say that the man didn't meet her expectations, wasn't what she wanted. So instead of working through the conflict, instead of being able to get through that challenge, it's just kind of this fairy tale world where it's like, oh, you don't like what you're being dished, well then just go someplace else. But we're all on this planet together. There's nowhere to go to get away. I mean, we're all on the different sides of the planet right now, different places, talking to each other. There's nowhere to run to get away
there is a
from
very
those
big
who.
misconception. They say that the
Mhm.
man has to work, the man has to work,
No, you
the
don't
man
have. Yeah,
has to,
you just need a
they
team. You just need a team.
uh, as because there is something which is known as moderation in living. Like, you cannot go back to 20 years back, the way of 50 years back, and you have to apply the same thing in 2025, when when everybody is getting educated and how to use it, so many tools,
Mhm.
and they can work together and team up. And but the point, we still suffer here, where man is the provider. He's not just a commerce, a digit number, but a character. He has to become a character, that they
Mhm.
portray something from your childhood, that you're going to do a job. The first thing they have been taught is, like, when you grow up, you're going to do a job. The parents, they feed all the time, and once they grow
Mhm.
up, they have that they don't have anything about entrepreneurship. What is
Mhm.
that? And
Yeah.
now entrepreneurship is being taught by those professors who don't know even what entrepreneurship is, because they are professors in the universities. They
Mhm.
have never
Never
tried
look.
anything like
Mhm.
entrepreneurship. They have never tried
Mhm.
anything like that for real in life. So
Mhm.
we are being misguided by sometimes by cultures, by parents, by the environment, and
Mhm.
we are brought up in that way, that then when once we are grown up, we expect the same from our children.
Mhm.
When the time is changed, when the era has been changed, when the
Mhm.
AI is being, like, so many other things has been introduced.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely some. things from the past though that should continue to be brought along, like, hey, just because this person isn't, first of all, you chose the person that you are having this child with, that you're getting involved with. So any failures in that person is a failure in your judgment, right? Now, for you to just simply, pull out of this because it's not something that you want, gives you this false belief that you can simply just walk away from anything that you just simply don't want. But society doesn't work like that. Society does have its obligations. It doesn't say that the man has to provide or the woman has to provide, but what I am saying is that a team effort, two people that are providing two different, angles, there's going to be one that's more masculine. It could be the woman. There's going to be more feminine. There's going to be some amount of balance. There might be some conflict that the kids see between the parents, and then they get to see the parents resolve those conflicts and come back to a state of loving each other and not holding that resentment and, brooding over that person because they believe in their head that there's some fairy tale perfect option out there that's not going to have faults that they can find. And, even if that perfect ideal situation existed out there, we're not preparing them to be able to even acquire it, to get it. And so we definitely have to find some balance between the old ways of doing things and the new ways, right? There's never been a scenario, there's nothing in the world that you can just think to yourself, we're just going to cast away all of the past and start from scratch. Everything's built on the past, our language, everything. And to think that you can simply just replace it and make something better than what was there is to think that you are smarter and more capable than all of the previous humans that have ever existed before. And they had a lot more interactions with each other, due to being forced to, but to think that you're just going to rewrite things completely different, throw away the old script, it's dangerous. And to think that you can just create some structured, perfect, ideal world is, I think it's not just it's a lie, and creates cognitive dissonance. And that cognitive dissonance you can't protect them from because that's internal. So I think as a parent, should look around not at how you necessarily were raised, but in the world that you are now. What are the struggles that I face day to day at work, at the job? What are the people that I don't interact with as well as I wish I did, right? Maybe I'm not as assertive as I wish I was, and so it's affecting my ability to, get raises or to do the things that I'm qualified for. Or maybe I'm too assertive and a little bit on the aggressive side. Whatever the problems is that you see, bring that to your child, but not in a lesson necessarily where you just tell it to them. Let them experience those hardships in a, in a safer way. So that way now they, in your position, can do better than you. Because if you can teach your kid stuff that, if you can teach a kid at 15 something you didn't learn till you were 20s or 30s, then how much more can you teach them before they get to that age? How do you teach them those things without exposing them to the harshness of it? I don't think it's possible, right?
Yeah, you're right. It's like the things you have been through in life, and every father or mother, they don't want their children to go through the same, but they do go through something that we
Mm-hmm.
have never been through
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because of so it's like a vice versa. But just because the pains, actually, we unassuming all this, like what we have been through as parents, we are always telling them, don't do this because I wasted my time playing games. So you
Mm-hmm.
don't waste it. But in their mind, when I ask them more personally, like when I get to Ayan, why not like learning coding? And the next 3 years or 4 years, you're going to be a coder that tomorrow you're going to make your own game instead of being a user. Why not being a coder? So when you bring them towards that
Mm-hmm.
side, they bounce back, they jump, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they
Yeah,
they
because I mean, why not? They have no understanding of what the reality is and how things play out. And so I mean, for example, this kid, he's telling me, because we were asking him, he's 13, what is it that you want to do? You have any idea what it is you'd like to do? And he's like, sports. So I was like, sports, right? Like he wants to make a living off sports. All right, cool. Now here he is, just shoveling away the food, laying on the couch playing video games. And I told him, I'm like, you can do it. You can make it happen. But if you want it to happen, you've got to get up every single day and you've got to work hard at it. How do you explain to someone that hard work, those negative feelings, are the source of the greatest strength? That's where their confidence comes from. That's where their abilities, their skills, the things that no one can take from them come from that. If everything's just fed to them, you just tell them what to do. It's I don't think I'd want a kid or anyone that just
See,
simply did everything based on what you told.
this realization, Colin, like we keep telling them, look, man, you came from, because they're doing everything else. They're going to school, they come back, they go to academy, they come back, they eat, and then they want to play a game. For example, like whatever the hobby is. So they want to be fully in that because they are fulfilling everything else, because they're going to school, they're going to academy, they're learning everything else. So why not my game? Now telling him that playing a game instead of playing a game, why not be a coder? Now that's challenging because he has been studying all 12 hours, and
Mhm.
now in the end you want him to be a coder. So it's going to be very tough for him because he wants to
Yep.
talk to the people online while playing games. Hi, yes, I'm coming online.
Mhm.
Okay, you go on
Yeah.
the left, you go on
Well,
the right.
but what's worse is I think it's because when they go to school and they are being told what to do, they don't see the reward of effort, right? You put in effort just to maintain, right? It's not like if I put in a lot of effort and I try hard, then something great will happen. No, you might get an A or whatever on your report card, but that report card's old. You have to focus on the next one and the next one. And so it's constantly this whole cycle of working hard to obtain nothing. You throw it away and you start over from scratch. Now you're trying to tell them to pick up and try something hard. And they're like, what's the point of doing anything hard if I'm just going to throw it away? If it's just going to be something they don't see how it carries out into the future to build them into someone who is happier, healthier, and more confident, right? It's simple, right? Like if your kid, for example, is overweight, you
Well,
could do everything. You could do everything in your powers to not make them feel bad about their weight, right? Don't worry about it, honey. Don't. If someone picks on you, go tell a teacher. Keep allowing them to distract themselves from something that bothers them, and then when they're an adult or they're older, it's not going to go away. It's going to get worse. Or you could say, hey, look, if it bothers you, then you should do something about it. It's going to
you
be
know,
hard,
there
and
was
what do
a
you do with it? You could either come to terms with accepting yourself the way you are, being comfortable, and not allowing people's words to impact you negatively
yeah.
because you are okay with who you are, or you change who you are into something you're proud of. But the alternative now is just to be like, no, 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 you're perfect, which is it's the opposite of parenting, because you literally start off
You
as a baby and you're like, you need a lot of work to do
Yeah,
what you do for the world. You'll never be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. I'm
there's
going
no
to be
such.
constantly trying to improve myself, help you improve yourself, and there's none of that just is. It could just be fed to you, and it tastes good and it's easy. It all comes through some amount of struggle, effort, and these are the realities of the world. Those are the realities that haven't changed. The way in which you struggle and the way in which you do these things, the way in which someone can hurt your feelings now versus then may change, but the way you feel, it still hurts, right?
Yeah, it hurts because see, they were in a Harvard Business School. There was a research that took place, and the professor, they called all the alumni for the dinner, and for blah blah blah, and all he noticed that whatever the alumni were, they present there in the dinner, they they were like working on a very, they all were like having big titles and nice houses, luxurious jobs, and everything. But the professor noticed that every single of them uh, had relationship problems, at problems, personal problems like uh, wives and children and blah blah. So he tried to figure it out, like what is going on and why is this happening. I mean, they were the top alumni, and they are very good at their jobs and everything else, but in the end, their personal life is freaking out. So he did a research and he found the answer. He says that actually what happens that when you do a job, you get your reward after 15 and 30 days as a salary or you know pay,
Yeah.
right? And then you stay happy. And but in case of relationships, you are putting something that going to give you a reward after 15 or 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
who's going to wait? So this is one thing that bothers most of the relationships. They don't know what they're doing right now, but that is going to give you a reward after 10 years, 20 years.
Mhm. Delayed gratification. Yeah. Everything right now, everything given to you. And, I think to sum it up here, if we want to close out, just really think about it. You want to protect your kids from the world. Do you want to do so yourself physically? Do you want them to be completely vulnerable whenever you're not around or if someone's not around? Or do you want them to be completely safe because they can protect themselves? Hopefully better than you because they're in a better a time where there's more information. Everything you can give to them. You have all of the failures of your life, your parents' life, and everything that you can stack into them to make them better and more capable than you. Do you want them to be more capable than you? And in the places that matter the most, how to protect and guard your feelings, how to know if someone loves you, how to work through the difficulties of a relationship or to deal with a boss that's, a racist or doesn't like you for whatever reasons. Do you want them to be able to do that on their own? Or do you want them to have a protected childhood that doesn't make it more enjoyable. It comes with more anxiety, if anything, because the more you outsource your protection, the more you're anxious to hope that someone's going to do their job. Or do you want them to be confident, happy, healthy, and better off than you, so that way they can have grandkids that are even better off than they are? And when you're grandparent and you're looking at your grandkids, you just think to yourself, wow, just they put me to shame. They're so much better than me in every way. I have nothing else really to give them. Or do you want to be worried, like, who's going to protect them if someone says, the N word? Like if someone says this word, how will they break down? Will that ruin their day? Will that ruin their life? I don't know. These are the challenges of life. We can give that to them early on now, or we can let them stumble into it later. That's I think we'll just go ahead and close it here, man. I think we got the point across pretty well. I think it was pretty obvious, and I'm getting a little tired now. You should definitely get some sleep. You said it's 5 o'clock in the morning now?
5 o'clock my time, and it was
5 o'clock.
great talking to you. I mean, I just saw you online. I said, let's jump onto Anthony and give him some time. So thank you so much. Great to
Well,
be
thank
on
you,
your
man.
show.
And hey, Leslie. Glad that you were here for that. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You have a good one.